You're still with us, Hélène Conway-Mouret. Great to have you on the programme this evening with us, Hélène. I'd like to know, first of all, how are you viewing these events? What is foremost in your mind right now after what's happened in Venezuela, the consequences? And is it a curse or a blessing for Venezuela?
Well, um, it has taken us by surprise, as the Americans hadn't actually warned the Europeans about this military operation. Of course, nobody believed that the deployment of the U.S. Navy in the Caribbean was simply to stop a couple of fishing boats carrying some bundles of drugs. So obviously, there was a preparation of a major coup which has happened. So this every time this kind of consideration as to what has actually happened, but I think it's very coherent with what Donald Trump is actually doing overall, both for the internal policies, to reassure the American people that is acting for them, and indeed fighting drug, which is a plague, is a just cause, except that violating the sovereignty of a state and kidnapping or capturing its president goes far beyond what would be expected. So I think it has sent a lot of messages. First of all, of the American military supremacy in the world, that indeed Americans can do what they want, where they want, when they want. Also, to us Europeans to show us that indeed we do not count very much, but indeed that was announced with Mr. Vance's speech in Munich nearly a year ago, which we didn't want to, hear. That is that, in the world, there is China, there is Russia, and there is the United States, and everybody else is to go about, trying to find, its place between these big empires. Well, all of that is true. What this operation has done is to fracture, I think, for 2026 and after international security, because I do not see why tomorrow President Putin would feel that he should act differently. Likewise with China and Taiwan. I mean, what will stop China tomorrow from taking over Taiwan, saying that it is in the interest of China, invoking whatever reason there may be. It's oil for the Americans. It could be the chips for the Chinese, and that's it. So it means that it's the rule of the strong ones that prevail, and it's the rule of force against international law. And of course, us Europeans, we may be the last continent to believe in democracy and democratic values, because if you see who has actually supported the American intervention, the American action, it's the extreme right. Leaders around the world, and certainly the 2 or 3 that are in power now in South America, who felt that what was done by the Americans was right. So, there's a very strong ideology. There is a kind of a new world order. This was announced, but I think, what was announced is not taking place in front of our eyes. It has taken less than a year for Donald Trump to put in place what he has announced. And it is ideologically driven. And of course, it is not in line with international law or democratic values the way we know them in Europe.
Hélène, interesting, that maybe not surprising that the rhetoric is different to the reality, or at least it's changing. Marco Rubio now saying that the US won't govern Venezuela.
Well, I think it was never to be the case. I think this is not about restoring democracy. I'm not, I'm convinced that Donald Trump and his administration are not concerned at all about this. They're just concerned about seizing the world's largest petrol resource. I think it's far greater even than what Saudi Arabia has. And I think, in his speech, Donald Trump has used the term petrol 20 times. So I think that was his objective. I also believe that while the military operation was impeccable, if you like, from the point of view of the result. I think there must have been a great level of collusion and preparation for it. But while we have no doubt to believe um, uh, the, the talents of the intelligence American services, I do believe that somehow some agreement was passed. Maybe that the military will rule the country, or the vice president will remain in place. And I think what the biggest concern for the Trump administration is for the American oil companies to take hold of the resources, and thus having the United States somehow weakening China, which I think gets 80% of its own oil from Venezuela, and also Russia, because we're going to see great, movements as to the price of oil. And if you remember, the war in Ukraine is funded mainly by the oil and gas exports by Russia, which today is under sanctions, but still happening. So what we have there is something which is much bigger. And of course, Donald Trump, by kind of saying, look, I haven't changed the government. It was just, we captured the president of that country. So therefore, we didn't have to go to Congress. We didn't declare war on Venezuela, and that's why we today have, the Venezuelan people being told, sorry, that they have to go about their own business, as usual. So I think, that's why we see this change as well, because, it's not about the United States ruling Venezuela. And indeed, if we go back to Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya, I mean, what did the Western operations, military operations, achieve in those countries, if not just chaos, and certainly not the restoration of democracy in none of these countries? So I think, if they were to do that with Venezuela, might end up with a civil war, and I think it will be a big mess for the Americans. Well, it's a very strange and disappointing statement by the French president. One expects better as regards the defense of international law and violation of the UN Charter, which has taken place with the American operation. So, does it go far enough? Well, I think it doesn't go anywhere. That's the problem. And which again goes back to what I said previously about, unfortunately, Europe displaying its weaknesses, and also being so much centered on the resolution of the war in Ukraine, which obviously is very much linked with the American commitment to continue supporting Ukraine. That I think the Europeans are totally entangled in that, and out of fear, out of weakness, whatever, is not, well, like, we're not playing the role we should be playing in this. I mean, what has taken place there in Venezuela may take place in Cuba. Of course, it's going to please a lot of Republicans. I mean, if indeed Cuba and Venezuela fall, I mean, these have been thorns really for a long time in American history, to have these countries, standing up to the American domination. So, of course, that will be pleasing to some, but I think overall what has taken place is not good news for anybody, for international security, international law, institutions, and so on. So,
Hélène, lovely to talk to you tonight. Thank you for your time. Hélène
likewise.
Conway-Mouret.